Welcome to the Underground, the Steel City Underground, the black and gold standard for Pittsburgh Steelers coverage. Now, here's your host, Joe Kuzma and Zach Celadonia.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Steel City Underground podcast. My name is Joe Kuzma, and joining me here today, you may recognize this guy from somewhere. I don't know. I had to do all new graphics, put things down in the corner and everything else. For one, Zach Flash Celadonia. Hey, welcome back, man. What's going on?
Hey, thanks. Glad to be here, I guess.
Oh, man. You know, I was talking about how we might tackle this show, how we might approach this. I think we could both agree neither of us are in a very good mood right now. Some people don't understand how football can put you in such a sour mood. And then you see everything on social media. It just kind of cracks me up. Like, I can get like instant, like the knee-jerk reactions that people have. Like right after the game, 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, maybe they were out, they go out to dinner, they finally get on, maybe they're not on social media right away. They hop on the Facebook after they, burp and fart and whatever after dinner, before bed, whatever. But it's like the folks that are like they're going to be talking about this nonstop for like the next few days. It's just going to nauseate me. You see it this morning, like it's some like big revelation. It's like, yo, I know this is like the news to you, whatever comment that you made, blah, 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 Charlie Brown voice, wah, 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 wah. And I was like, I've heard that 10 times already. Like, it's not an original thought. And then there's people that are like, then they'll retweet it and then they'll post it like in multiple Facebook groups and stuff. There's like a Facebook group I'm ready to just get out of Dodge on altogether. That I hang out in these things. I'm usually silent. I try and bite my lip. But man, there are some really bad comments out there, and it's almost like the bad takes of the week thing that you were trying to do at first. And I think we got to start to approach this game. 13-10 loss. Cleveland Browns on the road at Cleveland, rookie quarterback, second start all time. Browns are now 7-3. Steelers dropped to 6-4. We were talking off air. First priority here is there's a lot of football left. So, like, no reason to like jump off a bridge. Any of them. There's plenty of them in Pittsburgh, or wherever you may be. But yeah, like everybody kind of slow down for a second. We're going to take a look at all of these things. It doesn't look necessarily positive because I think what it is Zach, scraping the surface. People feel entitled to beat the Cleveland Browns because that's just the way it's been since 1999 when they were brought back as an expansion team with their previous legacy or whatever before they moved to Baltimore. It was like probably this was the rivalry, right? And it wasn't much of a rivalry. I think if I had to look it up, Mike Tomlin was what against this team? I know Kevin Stefanski was 2-5. Let's see. Mike Tomlin was 26-6-1 all time against the Browns. Now it's like fire everybody. And you hear it every time they lose. And I could see why this one might be a little bit of a better taste in everyone's mouth because they feel like they should have walked all over this team, especially all considering. But the Steelers have enough of their own problems too. Like you just need to kind of slow your roll and see how this goes forward.
Yeah, it's really tough being the Steeler guy in your friend group. I mean, most of my friends and family, the company I keep, we all are Steelers fans. But when you're known as that being your like dominant personality trait, everybody looks to you for answers. Everybody wants to vent to you. You get phone calls after the game, text messages, tweets, and I don't want to belittle the loss in any way. Yesterday was a bad loss for the Steelers. There was some bad football being played by the Steelers, but you have to see the bigger picture and take what small good things you can from the season that we've had so far. We lost, but we're still in the playoffs as it stands right now. There's still football left. The Steelers can still make the playoffs and possibly win a game. But I won't hide the fact that yesterday's game was ugly. There was a lot of bad things to break down from the offensive standpoint, from the quarterback standpoint, from the defensive standpoint, coaching decisions. Really, it's hard to find anything that went well yesterday. I found myself in different times during the game about to send a tweet about something good I noticed, and then I wasn't able to send it because 2 seconds later, something bad would happen. So right now we're at critical mass in Pittsburgh. People feel like the sky is falling and people are really pissed off. And they have a right to feel that way as a fan. It wasn't a pretty sight yesterday, but things can get better. They still can. Currently, though, I don't feel too good. I wish I had more answers for people than I'm going to try to produce on this show, but I slept on it, and I definitely felt worse right after the game yesterday than I do right now. Sometimes all you need is to walk away, calm down, cool off for a little bit. You don't want to always react emotionally. It's hard not to when
Thanks,
talking about
brother.
your favorite sports team, talking about your livelihood, or talking about a relationship that you have. But sometimes the best thing to do is just step away for a little bit, try to compartmentalize, figure out where to go from here. And I woke up feeling a little bit better. I'm still pissed off. I'm still really
Mhm.
upset because of how the game went yesterday. But, you know, when you are in a division like the Steelers are, the AFC North, every game is magnified. Every game is so important. Every NFL division, the divisional games are important. But there's something about AFC North football that I don't know if it's the rivalries amongst fan base. I don't know what it is, but they just sting a little bit more when you lose, even if you are still quote unquote alive in the playoff race.
Oh, absolutely. There's still 3 more AFC North games to go, too, on the Steelers' schedule. They got the Cincinnati Bengals this upcoming Sunday, which is a whole other story. The Bengals are dropped to 5-5, but they're 0-3 in the division and have lost Joe Burrow for the season. Most people would be salivating, you know what I mean, like sharks with the blood in the water. But Steelers had enough of their own issues even going into this game yesterday. But taking it from like the macro perspective of the first thing I saw some ridiculous stuff. I see people that are like everywhere from bring back Mike Munchak to play Mason Rudolph. I saw people wanting to put Rudolph in yesterday. He's emergency quarterback. You just can't just yank him off the bench. They're not going to bench Kenny anyways. Some people are like still on the Mitch Trubisky hasn't had a chance train. I'm so sick of hearing that. But right at the top, there was somebody that said, well, this is all because Rooney's cheap. And I'm like, what? Rooney doesn't spend money. And I saw that comment like multiple times. I'm like, maybe somebody out there listening or watching this can tell me where the hell does that come from? Because the NFL has a salary cap. And you get penalized if you don't spend up to a certain amount of money on said salary cap. Like, where's he being cheap? Because I remember hearing the Rooneys would never re-sign TJ Watt and give him this guaranteed money and blah, blah, blah. And lo and behold, made him like the highest paid player until the next guy. But at the time when he signs his contract, highest paid, edge rusher. Oh, they're not going to sign.
A lot of money put into defense.
Yeah, Alex Highsmith, same thing this offseason. They went out and they kept Deontay Johnson. They went and made Minka Fitzpatrick highest paid safety at the time he signed his contract. And I just don't understand where that comes from. Now, I'll give you a little more to chew off of this ownership. Then it goes to coaching. And I understand. We could talk about Matt Canada all day long. We will. We'll get into different players and plays. Certainly, he's an issue. Like Mike Tomlin, he's got to go. It's too much complacent stuff. Oh, they'll just play for another 500 season. It's like, did you see what the AFC looks like? Do you think the Steelers are the only ones who have these sorts of issues? The Dolphins are 7-3. Okay. The Buffalo Bills are 6-5. Okay. They've already had 5 losses. They've lost more games than the Steelers. Also, they haven't had their bye week yet. So their record is a little different, but you look at a team like the Jets, 4-6, and they lost Aaron Rodgers. They were all in on that, right? You got who else around? There's just like how many teams in the AFC actually have a losing record? You got the Jets, the Patriots. The Patriots are 2-8. You got the Tennessee Titans at 3-7. You got the Chargers at 4-6, and the Raiders at 5-6. I'm sorry, I forgot about the Raiders too, and the Chargers. Justin Herbert, and people are like, oh, well, I wish they could have had Justin Herbert, or they can get Justin. No, he just signed a big long-term contract. This isn't like an organization problem thing here. This is parity in the NFL. Damn near every team is playing 500 ball across the AFC with the exception of what, like 2, 3, whatever. And you got the game that'll be tonight with the Eagles and the Chiefs. So, I mean, where I'm trying to go with this is like, how is ownership the problem? You could certainly do worse with coaching. You might be able to get a new young mind in there, but I mean, Mike Tomlin lives, breathes football. And there's a lot of critique about why doesn't he do this or why did he do that or whatever. I think he's playing with a very limited hand. I don't know where he's handcuffed. We know that Mike Tomlin has been said that he hires and fires his own staff. I don't know if where Rooney comes in with that. You get these comments about Mike Tomlin doesn't want to hire anyone where he would be upstaged. But at the same time, think about it in your own job. Last year, they bring in Brian Flores, right? I wish they would have kept Brian Flores. I wish Brian Flores would have been the defensive coordinator in Pittsburgh instead of in Minnesota. You saw how he's turned that team around. But at the same time, you're just going to fire. What grounds do you have to fire Terrell Austin? What kind of precedent does that set when you are hiring staff? Well, as soon as I'm interested in the next guy, your ass is gone. You know what I mean? It's like a player losing their job to injury. So I'm not like necessarily going to throw them out there. And my last comment on this, very long-winded, was like with the Matt Canada thing. Yeah, he sucks. We've been saying that all year long. I don't have any defense of him like I used to defend at least Todd Haley. I didn't really defend Randy Fichtner either. I thought Randy Fichtner was just Ben's buddy, and it was disguised a lot because you had a future Hall of Fame quarterback. With Matt Canada, it was more or less, okay, Kenny wasn't quarterback 1. He wasn't even quarterback 2 at training camp last year. He didn't start the season as quarterback 1. So let's get an off season. Let's not change his offensive coordinators. And let's not rock the boat too much. That also leaves the argument of maybe they should just scrap the whole thing and start it over because they could be ruining this guy, you know? So it's like we've seen what happens with quarterbacks when you change offensive coordinators too frequently. And I'll leave it at that for you until we get into the individual players and how this game went. But I just see that like there's so many different levels of this where I think people are just like, well, it's coaching, well, it's this. And it's like, it's not the Steeler way to just blow everything up. And you got a 6-4 team. They might be playing like crap, but they're still winning games. What point do you blow? What do you blow this up? It sounds crazy. Even if like 2-8 Patriots, are you going to blow that up with Bill Belichick, who's been coaching like close to 30 years and has all this success and his assistants, et cetera, et cetera? I don't think so.
No. I mean, I think the Patriots and Steelers are in vastly different positions right now. But to get to the points you made, Rooney being cheap or the Rooneys being cheap is laughable, considering that we are not too far removed from Ben Roethlisberger absolutely screwing the cap situation because they paid him so much money. They have the highest paid defense, or they used to. They pay dudes. That's factual. It's not hard to look that up. So they're not cheap. As far as coaching is concerned, the grass isn't always greener. People have wanted Tomlin fired for the past 10 years, and I still think he's a good coach. He has his flaws, as most coaches do. He makes mistakes. Sean McDermott and Brian Dable were the apple of everyone's eye last year, and they both are not coaching well this year, really at all. Tomlin's out coaching both of them, and McDermott is a certified good coach, has tenure, has proven success. Dable, coach of the year last year, but that just shows you how different things can be in a calendar year in the NFL season. When you have a guy as stable and as consistent as Tomlin, that means something. And I think this loss meant so much to Steeler fans yesterday and to analysts everywhere, not only because we looked so bad on offense and we played so bad, but it was the shock factor, I think, really, of losing to the Browns, number one, losing to DTR in his second overall start after in his first start he looked terrible. So and it was in Cleveland, emotions were high. It's the shock factor that people react to and makes everybody want to say, like, Tomlin's got to go, Canada's got to go, he might have to go, but Tomlin's got to go, Kenny's got to get benched, like all these things. Man, it's okay to say it was a bad job yesterday by all hands on deck. It was a terrible performance. Offense, defense, special teams, coaching. It's okay to say all that. It's okay to say that it was a failure without saying this means everybody's going to get fired.
Yeah.
Like, that's just how sports are. I'm not saying fans don't have a right to be upset. They do. I am upset. I don't think Tomlin should be fired, but I get why people are mad at him. But this is just how it goes when you lose a game in the NFL. Everybody wants everybody gone, but fact of the matter is, nobody's going to get fired this week. Could moves be made at the end of the season, in particular at the offensive coordinator position or even possibly defensive coordinator? Sure. But halfway through the season, they're not going to do anything drastic like that at this stage.
Yeah, you know what I was going to say, Zach? I don't feel defense was a problem in this game overall, all considering, and we're going to cover that. Actually, should that be the next thing? I was trying to gain my bearings here because just on the coaches, the owners. Oh, you mentioned something about DTR. And a second, he was like basically thrown in there against the Ravens without like any preparation. It reminded me of Mason Rudolph getting thrown in against the Detroit Lions with what was that? Was Ben like a COVID thing or whatever back then? I don't remember what that
It sounds
was.
right. Sounds right.
I don't know. It might have been before predated that. I don't remember. It's just funny that so many people hated on that guy too, Mason Rudolph, that is. And now all of a sudden it's like they want to give him a chance. Oh, is it because you saw him throw for 300 yards against the Browns in like a game where they were missing? They sat 8 starters at the end of the season and had a lock for the playoffs in that 2020 season. That's like, I've been trying to tell people that for a while, that maybe he should have gotten a chance. And you got people that say, oh, he got a chance. And you got people that say, oh, well, Kenny's been given enough of a chance, bench him. And I'm like, that's just so bad. But yeah, let's flip over to the defense. Well, you know what? We can do special teams first. Actually, Presley Harvin III can go. Like, just don't pass go. Don't collect $200. I've had enough of, with those positions, when you're talking about kickers in the NFL, it's a very, like, you could be more patient with like a rookie quarterback or a second year quarterback, or you get into year 3 and then you're kind of like, and that's kind of why I brought up the Patriots, because they got Mac Jones and it's like, what are they going to do there? Obviously they're kind of handicapped. The development of the quarterback isn't the way it should have been. And correct me if I'm wrong, didn't Mac Jones like make a Pro Bowl or something his rookie year? Like,
yeah. I mean, he was like an alternate twice removed. They also made the playoffs when he was a rookie too, and it's just been like all downhill since then for Mac Jones.
Yeah, and that's my point with like when people were like, "Oh, play Mitch Trubisky" or something like that. But with the kickers and the punters, like, what do you owe? Like, it's just, please, like, Brad Wing was doing fine. Like, maybe Brad Wing probably isn't the paradigm of consistency either. But man, that shanked punt that happened in the game, and of course the Steelers were the beneficiary of a shanked one from Bjorquez. But we'll get to that in a little bit too. But defensively, the Steelers came in handicapped. You talk about Mike Tomlin, we talk about Terrell Austin, we talk about all of these different various things. Yes, the final drive of the game, not so great. We'll get to that too. But just on this level, okay, TJ Watt is probably the Steeler right now. He is the only guy that's really showing out. The Browns paid so much special attention to him.
The Pittsburgh TJ Watts is what I call him.
Yeah, they should be. I mean, he's playing his mind out. Not to say that Alex Highsmith, Cam Hayward's obviously not 100%. He was down on his butt a couple of times and had to be helped up. He was, limited in practice because of that groin, and he's trying to get out there and contribute and play. I think Keanu Benton has been, what do we say? Put the rookie class in, use these guys. And all of these guys have been contributors, but Benton was the one where I was really looking at somebody like defensive line. I'm like, go get him. And he has been, he's been balling, man. He's making like,
yeah, Ben's been good.
Tackles outside at the numbers. We saw it again yesterday. And the defense in general. Okay, so you had to play Michael Walker, who was with the Falcons, was a practice squad guy somewhere, Chiefs something or other. They plucked him from, I can't remember. But he was a veteran player, but wasn't picked up by anybody because nobody saw him as like much more than depth. Not an improvement, definitely not a starter on your team. So this is a guy you got to plug into this system now to try and beat the Cleveland Browns, rookie quarterback or not. Rookie quarterbacks can be tricky too because you don't have tape, you don't have film on them, you don't know what to expect. Browns, well, to get to that in a second. You got Trenton Thompson, you got Elijah Riley, who didn't even finish.
Trenton Thompson played good.
Trenton Thompson balled.
I liked what I saw from Trenton Thompson, especially because I liked him in preseason. He's got good ball skills, good range, good size, good instincts. Went to San Diego State, like DeMonte Casey. So there's something in the water there where they're able to develop ball skills and ball tracking. He almost had a pick, might have been a pick 6. Yeah, there he is, rocking number 17 in the secondary. That's a sight. But
I know
I like
that throws me off.
Yeah, it's weird. I like his tools. I was excited he got an opportunity and he shined. So maybe they found something there. There aren't a lot of positives to take away from yesterday, but I thought that Trenton Thompson played really well given the circumstance that he was put in.
Yeah, this is going to give me an opportunity to talk about officiating at some point too, because I don't know how this crew, Sean Hockley, calls one penalty against the Cleveland Browns all day long. Joey Porter Jr. gets tagged for hand fighting. That was literally nothing. You had Amari Cooper pushing off what felt like the entire game. I thought Patrick Peterson played very well too. I thought Peterson's really been coming into his own.
He's been better.
Yeah, I still don't know. And some of that is because Porter is ascended. Porter's cornerback 1. They're not doing this kind of jazz now where Joe Hayden just plays on one side of the field and the other dude plays on the other. This has been Joey Porter was roaming around and following Amari Cooper for much of this game too, that I noticed.
Yeah, and that penalty, that ball, DTR put that in the first row of the stands.
Yeah, I know.
I really didn't think, like, I don't know if a quarterback ever does that, and the refs just decide that, like, the quarterback saw that, so he just wanted to get it in the vicinity, and they throw the flag.
Yeah.
But by definition, I thought that ball was pretty uncatchable.
Yeah, it's when see, it's a tough thing to say about officiating too, and it's going to be me kind of defending it. When the decision in your mind is made isn't necessarily when the flag is thrown. And as a human being, you're going to, did I see what I thought I just saw? You might second guess it. You might not always go with the gut instinct. And you've got to do this in split second with elite athletes at the professional level. Very difficult to do. So that could very well be it. It was, oh, well, DTR is throwing this in his, well, he just threw it in his stands because this guy's not available to throw to because he was just held. Very likely, yes. And then that's okay, valid penalty. Just didn't seem like a whole lot now. Like, it just seemed like no matter what, the Steelers weren't going to catch a break in this game. They did, however, hold the Cleveland Browns running game for the most part. They had 96 yards. It was distributed. There was a little bit. DTR got squirted out a little bit. But we're talking about Kareem Hunt only having 3 yards per average, 12 carries for 36 yards. Jerome Ford, 12 for 31, a 2.6 average. I'm talking about the Cleveland Browns. Now, they have backup tackles. They didn't really get home much. I know Watt got the 1 sack. DeJuan Jones was kind of playing half the game. I think he got about 30 snaps. And, he's the rookie out of Ohio State that I'm still a little irritated that ended up in Cleveland.
Well, they did a good job of neutralizing. I guess, well, TJ Watt still got a sack, but the Browns knew that the Steelers' strength of their defense, their healthy strength, was TJ Watt and Alex Highsmith. A lot of the game centered around the Browns running in the middle, away from those two, so that they wouldn't be factors in the game. And it worked for the most part. You didn't hear a lot from TJ Watt or Alex Highsmith. So I was impressed with the manner at which the Steelers were able to kind of stifle the Browns' run game. They got a few holes, and they had a few squirts, but I feel like tackling really came through in a big way for the Steelers, where the past X amount of years, we've seen a lot of ugly tackling in Pittsburgh and a lot of runs that should have been shorter runs go for long gains because the Steelers just don't wrap up and tackle. That was another one of the few positives I noticed yesterday. That was when the Browns would manage to get ahead of steam, and go for 4 or 5 yards. They didn't get much more than that. They were wrapped up on first contact, and that was a good point of emphasis from the defense, I think, was the tackling was on point.
Absolutely. Landon Roberts was playing out of his mind. I mean, he played, did he play 100% or 99? Hold on. He only missed one snap. No, he played the full game, all 75 defensive snaps. The only other guy
man, my man's in shape.
Demonte Case. Oh, he was sucking wind because he hadn't been playing 100% game to this point. They relied on him to do everything. Michael Walker, 84%, 63 of 75 snaps. Just
Walker was in the right place at the right time, and with a few plays. But there was one play in particular down by the goal line. Jerome Ford, I believe, up the middle. Walker read it perfectly, fired through his gap, and wrapped Ford up, and Ford bounced to the outside and was tackled by somebody else. But it's like Walker had it going for a minute there. He knows what he's doing. It's just, I think, him not playing football all season long, the rust showed up a little bit too.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, Cam Hayward got spelled a little bit. You had Benton with 39 snaps, Hayward with 46, Ogunjobi with 53. But they still, I thought the defense did its job for all the names. Landon Roberts was I know they were working on everybody having green dots, but for all intents and purposes, let's call it what it is. Cole Holcomb is green dot, and Quan Alexander was green dot too. That's what the way it was really set up to be. And Landon Roberts is really thought of as more of just a downhill type linebacker, or Vince Williams, not a cover guy, anything like that. So it's gonna be interesting to see how they match up and some of the things they do. We've had the speculation. I wish I would have said this on the podcast ahead of all of this last week, because I was like, I mentioned the name and I mentioned how they gone through, like, it makes me ill thinking about all the inside linebackers that have been hurt in Pittsburgh over the years, starting from Shazier, and you go all the way down the line after that. Then every guy that's replaced him, whether they've been effective or not, and even replacing Vince Williams for that matter. You've had like LJ Fort, you've had Sean Spence, you've had John Bostic. Somebody actually, I think, said that Bostic did one of these sites or articles that Brian was talking about. Oh, they could go out and get, but no, they don't know Bostic or
Avery Williamson.
Avery Williamson's a name I forgot about because the trade deadline, it came out and it was like Steelers trade moves. I'm like, man, I totally forgot about that dude. Like afterthought and a half, and really like out of the league, I think right after that. Mark Barron, Devin Bush. Like, would they go and grab somebody like Devin Bush? Like, it didn't even occur to me. It's like Bush, I mean, he might be on a practice squad for the Seahawks. I'm not even sure if he's in the league right now. I have to go back and look. But I forgot that Miles Jack actually retired. And I was like, the reason Miles Jack was let go was because of an $8 million cap hit for a guy that, you know, they didn't get a whole lot of production at this position. Would he be willing to come back and play for a lesser role and lesser money? Probably not. Okay, shake hands. Thank you for your time in Pittsburgh. Now it's like, who's available? It's still out there. I mean, the Browns, even with their quarterback situation as it is, they're obviously not enamored with PJ Walker being the only option for their rookie from UCLA. They went out and they're grabbing Joe Flacco off the heap. Who else is out there? Well, it looks like Miles Jack might be unretiring. May hear that he's going to be in Pittsburgh, take physical, because they don't like Mark Robinson in this role for whatever reason. And I think the real reason is that he has not developed to the point where, remember, this is only his third year playing as an inside linebacker. He had 1 year in college as a linebacker. It's why he was, what, a 6th or 7th round pick. So they're going to throw him out there over Michael Walker. I know he just hasn't been in with the team, but he's been in the league for 3-4 years. He has, dozens of starts, 100 tackles or so the year before. Okay, here's a guy that, like, when he sees something on the field, this isn't the first time he's seeing it. That's the problem with maybe Mark Robinson. So I don't necessarily want to say that Robinson's in the doghouse, because if he was that far in the doghouse, they got rid of everybody but Mark Robinson this offseason in that linebacker, with the inside linebacker group. So
yeah, I think they like Robinson's potential and they like his ceiling as a prospect. But yeah, he just hasn't developed at the speed at which you would like for a young guy too. But again, yeah, he's a 7th round pick. He's a former converted running back. So you can't expect that much of this kid. He's a good special teams player. And in small instances on defense, he's been able to come in and play the run game well, but he's not a starter. He's not the answer at starter. The Steelers made the right call, in my opinion, in starting Michael Walker instead of Robinson with Roberts, because Walker just has more NFL experience, more proven success playing linebacker in the NFL than Robinson does. This isn't a death sentence on Robinson's career by any means. He's just still very young and very raw.
Yep, absolutely. So, I mean, I'll say the most for the defense. We'll come back around to the final drive because we got to talk about the offense a little bit as well. I think we hit most of the points when it comes to the Steelers defensively. Hopefully Minka Fitzpatrick's back. I know they were talking about working out Eric Rowe, formerly of the Dolphins and a couple of other teams, like bringing in another veteran guy because Keanu Neal just went on. I mean, you're gonna like shout, like I'm gonna yell, because it's just like you don't expect to lose this many safeties. And when you can play Neal has always been injury prone, but that's like part of like how you shield him or Quan Alexander, guys that were injury prone, is by not playing them 100% of the game. Other guys get hurt, you're forced to put them into action, and guess what happens? They get hurt. It sucks.
Yeah, I wouldn't be opposed to Eric Rowe or Miles Jack coming in here to help just with some veteran leadership and give us some more depth, because we're starting to teeter on the line here of being pretty desolated. They're already starting guys that have been in the locker room for like 2 weeks. That's a sign that you've got problems, injury problems. Minka's supposed to come back. You still got Casey, and Trenton Thompson played well with his chance against the Browns.
Yes,
but I would still take a guy like Eric Rowe just to feel better about the depth back there, because we're 1 or 2 injuries away here, in particular from the middle of the defense, whether it's safety or linebacker, where we're already teetering on code orange here. We being full on code red. So I'm very bullish on how Trenton Thompson performed, but I would still take a guy like Eric Rowe just to shore up that backfield while we wait for the ultimate return of Minka Fitzpatrick. And Neal could be back too, because he wasn't put on season-ending IR, but it's going to be at least a couple more games here if we get to see him again.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. I think they extended it to 4 now because during COVID it was like 3. The one thing I like about the NFL now is that the IR spot is not like a death sentence for any players. So
yeah, they specify if it's season ending or not.
Yeah, and you could bring him back or try to bring him back once. This is what happened with Calvin Austin last year. Was they tried to bring him back, they activated that 21-day window, they had him at practice, he tweaked something, got hurt again. It's like, well, you go back on IR, then you're done. Like, you can't just keep coming on and off. It used to be you could only bring like one guy back, and then there was like 2 guys back. That's why Senquez Golson never got like off the ground. And that 1 year they held him into like October before like other injuries forced, like they had to do the transaction, put him on IR and finish his season. And poor guy never really got to play. If it was structured the way it is now, he may have been able to come back like later in the year, November, December. And maybe we're not talking about like I hate saying wasted pick. You could never foresee injuries or bad fortune like that. But yeah, what you were saying with the code orange, that's where I've been. I'm starting to get like flashbacks of like the 2019 season, and that's kind of where the offense was. And now you're back, you're coming back around. That was one of the things like where somebody was like, oh, Mike Munchak, whatever. I absolutely liked Mike Munchak, Hall of Fame player, oodles of experience, former head coach. They weren't a good run team the last year that he was here because that line started to fall apart. Marcus Gilbert was the first to fall. Pouncey started to get up in age. DeCastro started to have nagging injuries. Alejandro Villanueva was always kind of like a guy that played above, played up to their level at least. I mean, Ramon Foster was getting old. It was a good group of guys that Munchak had for those years, and they had a good offensive scheme with Todd Haley. So I can't blame Pat Meyer here because you see glimpses of it, and you saw it yesterday again with Jaylen Warren. And it comes back around. I'm mentioning offensive line, run game, and running backs first before we get to quarterback and passing game. But, where do I want to go with this?
Passing game?
Well, yeah, you don't have to mention much of it, right? But Warren has his second consecutive. Last week was his first 100-yard rushing game in the National Football League. Comes back around with another big game here, and pretty much the only offense that the Steelers had, a 74-yard touchdown run, 9 carries, 129 yards. This was at a time where the Steelers kind of felt like it was a 14.3 average because of that 74, right? So if you took the 74 out, hold on, this is going to be maths with Joe. So 129, and then the other 8 carries. It was a 6.8 yards per carry otherwise if you take out the big run on the other 8
which is what
carries.
Everybody loves to do. Every negative nil, it's like, oh, well, if you take out the most important play, it really wasn't that impressive. But you just did right there. Take out his big touchdown run. Jaylen Warren's still averaging over 6 yards a clip. Jaylen Warren is playing like the best running back in the NFL. No gray area.
That's hard.
He's playing like the best running back in the entire NFL. And it's why I'm starting to agree more and more with the fans being like, what's going on with the distribution of labor here, as Tomlin likes to say with the running back position? Najee, great locker room guy, runs downhill, runs hard. Jaylen Warren at this point, man, he's pretty clearly, crystal clearly better. And he is the center focal point of the offense. Like occasionally, if we're lucky, we'll get a deep shot to George Pickens, maybe Deontay, a couple possession catches. It is the Jaylen Warren show on the Pittsburgh Steelers offense. And he's the only reason why they had any life going into the second half with his long touchdown run. His ridiculous conversions when Kenny Pickett dumps it off to him for 1 yard, he takes it 12 yards. Which honestly makes me feel a little bit like I don't understand it, but I understand it a little bit when Kenny Pickett comes off of an open guy and goes to Jaylen Warren, because it's getting to the point here where it's automatic that Warren just rips off an insane yard after the catch number.
Yeah.
Not every time, but almost every time. And then you go into the second half and you give Jaylen Warren, what was it? I think I saw he got 5 touches in the second half. Is that accurate? Something around 5 touches. How do you let that happen as a coaching staff?
I'll find the halftime summary, and I could tell you because it was 9 carries. And so at halftime, it actually had only 3 carries. So 6 carries in the second half. Najee Harris did out-touch him. And it makes you wonder because Najee ends up with 12. But at halftime,
See, maybe they're trying a
Najee
little
had
like, oh,
5.
look over here. Now I'm going to hit you right here. Like make a bit like maybe like, oh, you were dealing with Jalen Warren all first half. Now you're tired. Now let's hammer him with Najee Harris. I get that line of thinking, but when a guy's running and playing as well as Jalen Warren, I say again, he's playing like the best running back in the NFL. You got to ride that hot hand.
Najee, I don't have always the biggest problems with Najee, but you could definitely see where he's not hitting holes fast enough. He tries to hit to the outside or run in an area that maybe he shouldn't go. A lot of it's like hindsight, but at some point, it's like you can't just say somebody. I know it's going to come back to bite me in the ass saying this, but Najee's been around a lot longer than Kenny Pickett has more starts. You can't just at some point be like, well, this guy had a bad game or he didn't see it this time. It's a pattern, right? And he's played behind bad offensive lines, but when the other guy's getting it done and Sparks the only life that you had in the offense, it goes down to like these last drives in the game that I think I do want to talk about before, because we got a lot to say about Kenny Pickett too, right? And just with the wide receivers, they were an afterthought the whole game. Pat Fryermuth comes back, just wasn't there. But specifically like with Najee Harris, and then I'm going to say Chuks Okorafor, people are trying to also make this link and say, well, the coaching staff doesn't like to be badmouth, blah, blah, blah. And that's why these guys were sat or were no longer the starters or whatever. They're playing below the line. They're replacements. This is the not for long league. Jalen Warren is outplaying Najee Harris now. There was something I had said earlier, maybe a month ago, and I said, if you give Jalen Warren the same plays as Najee Harris, let's see if he could do the same thing. Because it felt like Najee was doing the dirty work, and then Jalen comes in, third down back, whatever, creates. Defense sits back and just waits. It's 3rd and long, 3rd and 11, like we're getting used to. Everything's got to be a struggle. And then Warren ends up making something, takes crap and makes, a salad out of it. Let's see what he can do when he gets the ball earlier downs or whatever. And there's times where he's stopped, but not as frequently. I mean, he makes the guys in front of him, that offensive line, look so much better. Broderick Jones, you get behind him. This gets to where I was at. I got to pull up the game log here at the end of the game, but you had some drives near the end of the game. You had 2 drives, in fact, where the Steelers could have, should have, would have won this game, especially after a poor punt that got them the ball like right around that elf logo, right? You need like 15 yards or so, and Chris Boswell is going to be in business. He could kick a 50-yard field goal. At least you're going to put him out there and try, right? And they bring they trot Najee Harris out here and run him to the left on Dan Moore's side. Dan Moore is getting abused. He's a revolving door. And I'm like, what is this team doing? That's aside from Kenny and the problems there, the run game was working. Okay. And the second drive that they had was pass, where you could have just ran out the clock at least, and maybe you got to overtime, made the Browns like force them to use some timeouts, or maybe they don't have the time to do what they did at the end, where the defense is absolutely gassed. And now guess what? Because your punter sucks and the Browns get the ball and only need about 15, 20 yards in the same situation, the field position battle has just been awful the entire time.
Yeah, those last 5 minutes, last 6-7 minutes, we were outcoached and outperformed. Double whammy. It made me remind, before I get to the very end of the game, the very beginning of the game. Safety call. Safety, not safety. Ooh, probably a safety. Yeah, it was a safety.
How does that help? How does that help Kenny Pickett? Like right out the gate, he's getting slammed. It does not help him, and he's under duress the entire game. That's number one, because we got a lot to say about Kenny. Again, with something like this, you've got the, Jerome Ford touchdown, and they show an overhead shot, but the camera is back behind the line of scrimmage, so you're looking at like a 45-degree angle through bodies, and they say, oh, he crossed the line. I did not see at any definitive point where there was video evidence. Dude's wearing what? Like the dark brown shirt underneath, like his pads. You can see like his arm. You can't see the football, and the football's in his other arm. It's behind him. The officiating was poor.
It almost felt like a makeup call for the non-safety.
Maybe it was, but that's just my point, is that the calls were bad. You had a roughing the passer call, split second. DTR has the ball like just releasing from his hand, and like, was it Watt or was it Highsmith? I forget.
Highsmith.
I was Highsmith. Pretty much like kind of bounced off of him and even made sure he rolled and fell to the side to not fall on this dude, and they call it. Kenny gets driven into the ground. This was toward this was, I think it was in the fourth quarter. I think it was the drive. It was the drive where they don't end up scoring the touchdown and they tie the game. And I'm like, where's the call there? That was, if they wouldn't have called the first one, maybe I'm not saying so much about the other one. But how many times has Kenny been driven into the ground like this? Not trying to make excuses, but the guy's under duress, probably playing. You could still see Charles Davis was talking about how he has the jacket on still for his ribs. He had a hurt knee earlier in the year. So his mechanics are going to suck. His body is like, he's not 100%. Like, some of these throws are just going to sail, not to mention some of the miscommunication that's going on out there. So part of my point is, they had a drive. They had the one drive in the fourth quarter. It was the field goal. Okay. Let me try and bring this up. Chris Boswell kick. Okay. So Kenny Pickett, 2nd and 12 from the Cleveland 17. Empties out the backfield. Now this was, I think Jaylen Warren might have still been in at this point. Sends Jaylen Warren far left, top of your screen. You've been under duress. Your quarterback has been getting moved around all the time. Some people think that Kenny has happy feet. That's fine. I'm not going to disagree with that. But when he's feeling it as much as he's feeling it and needs to get the hell out of there, most other guys, you want to put Mason Rudolph in there? I don't think Mason moves as well as Kenny does. Probably gets sacked 7 times, and it would be very much a spotlight that the offensive line is not doing their job. Mason Cole, bad snaps, missing blocks, whatever. Dan Moore, revolving door. But because Kenny moves, but now you put Kenny in a position where it says, hello, Browns team that's been sending the house all day long. Come and get it. We are definitely passing the football. And lo and behold, he gets sacked. Lose 10 yards there. You got 3rd and 22, and you put Najee Harris back in. Now, Najee gets 17 off of this because Cleveland plays more of a prevent defense. That's one call there in this fourth quarter that drove me absolutely crazy, because if the Steelers can secure a touchdown here, you either get that penalty and it inches them a little forward. Maybe you leave Jaylen Warren in. Jaylen Warren runs the ball. Maybe you don't run a freaking empty set so Jaylen Warren can pick up a blitzer, and you score a touchdown. You have 14 points. It's more than what the Browns ended up scoring.
It's these decisions like that make it so hard to properly evaluate what Kenny Pickett is. Yesterday was probably his worst game of the season, and the good throws were few and far between. It's hard to find any. He's got happy feet. He's not trusting what he's seeing. He's not keeping his eyes downfield. When he does, he still checks it off. It's tough, man. I want to give the people fan flash and analyst flash. The fan in me wants to say, we've seen better out of Kenny Pickett. He's done better. He's made throws. He's made the right choice. He's shown signs at times of being the right guy for the job. And then you get games like these where the analyst in you has to come out and say, man, that was pretty unwatchable what we saw yesterday. But you do have these questionable, to say the least, coaching decisions from the Steelers where you have him going empty when he's been under pressure all day. You have him checking the ball down almost immediately to Jaylen Warren when the route concepts by the receivers haven't even begun yet. Like, is that Kenny being nervous and just taking Jaylen Warren, or is that the coaches in his ear saying, hey, get it to Warren fast right away? He's our playmaker. That's the kind of stuff that we don't know, that is completely in the dark, that makes it hard trying to evaluate what Kenny Pickett is doing. And when you're a guy like Kenny Pickett, who's a first-round drafted quarterback, and you're supposed to be the next franchise guy, and you've got fans on the hook, like hoping and wanting to see good football play, and you give us plays here and there, a couple of fourth quarter comebacks. It's games like yesterday where you don't get that fourth quarter magic, where you don't get those handful of clutch throws in a game. We got nothing from Kenny Pickett yesterday. And when you don't have the few good things that he's been able to do, when you don't have those in a game, how bad he plays is really magnified and under the spotlight. I can't be given a platform like this, and I can't be trusted to tell people what I'm seeing. I can't pee on people's shoulders and tell them it's raining. It's bad from Kenny Pickett right now. I think he can play better because we've seen better, and I have hope that he'll play better. But right now, we're in a bad spot. The Steelers are in a bad spot. I'll just give it to the people straight. And it's almost worse that Kenny Pickett has played well at times throughout his early career, because I think you know and I know that when this season ends, Kenny Pickett's going to be the guy next year. It would be very extreme and aggressive for the Steelers to just move on from him after this year and try to draft a quarterback or try to get somebody else in here in free agency. It's just not what they do. Look how long they've held on to Matt Canada. They've invested way less into Matt Canada than Kenny Pickett. And when you try to explain that to people, you get misunderstood as a Kenny Pickett apologist or somebody who's not seeing the bad. And that's not where I stand at all. I want better. I would kill for better. But I'm trying to see the long-term goal and the big picture here, where we're kind of stuck with this guy right now. And that doesn't excuse the bad play, the missed throws, the bad games, the happy feet. I'm just trying to see the light at the end of the tunnel.
And you should. And I'm not trying to make excuses for him. In fact, I feel like he needs reset. It'd be good to maybe sit him a week or two if he's not 100%. And I mean, you saw what the Bengals just did with Burrow and continue to do with Burrow. And Burrow's
if he's hurt, he's hurt. If he's hurt, use that opportunity to sit him down for. I agree with that wholeheartedly. If you think he's too hurt to play like the good Kenny that we've seen the few times throughout his career, sit him down, because it's getting indefensible at this point for people like myself and you.
Yeah, and by all means, I'm not trying to make excuses. Maybe he just won't be the guy. But I'm also trying to look at it from a point of even going back to last year when he became the starter. Stop, go at this guy's career. Gets knocked out of a game. What? Baltimore gets knocked out.
Tampa Bay.
Yeah, Tampa Bay, and then Mitch ends up playing against the Panthers. He's already got knocked out earlier this year with the knee injury. What was that, week 3 or 4 or whatever?
The Falcons and the Jaguars game.
Yeah, thanks, because I'm drawing like blanks here, and you end up playing Mitch Trubisky, and then Trubisky ends up throwing 3 picks in that game, and it's like he's not really the answer either. I alluded to he might not be the right mentor, but there's no consistency for Kenny, and it also doesn't help that this offense is completely broken. We saw like some instances here over the last couple of games. We got to give credit to the Cleveland Browns defense too. And they're playing on the road in Cleveland.
Absolutely.
That's a big component of this, because you saw them score on 2 opening drives. You saw them have a few scoring drives and maybe have some semblance of an offense, but they were unable to ride this momentum for whatever reason. And whatever reason that might be, damn near should have given up a safety on the first play from scrimmage. I mean, look what happened when that happened with Ben Roethlisberger and the ball that just got fumbled and everything when you're in that playoff game.
That's a great point too. Not everything is Kenny's fault. And that's where I get misinterpreted as an apologist. It's like, dude, that safety, like certain sacks he takes, like it's not clear miscommunication with Deontay Johnson. It's not all on Kenny Pickett, but when you play as bad as he's played, and you give the fans as little positives as he has, every mistake the offense makes, there are people that can just point right at number 8 and be like, dude, that's Kenny. That's Kenny. It's Kenny. And it's hard to defend, because if he was better, that's why you don't see better quarterbacks get that treatment. You know, like if somebody like CJ Stroud takes a bad sack right now, or if Joe Burrow throws an interception, or even Trevor Lawrence like takes a sack fumble, people aren't immediately on their ass. Like, oh, that's totally on them because they've done better things in their career than Kenny Pickett has. Because we're at this standstill with Kenny Pickett's development, every mistake the offense makes, every mishap they have, it's just got this exclamation point attached to it.
It's tough, too, because you're coming in for Ben Roethlisberger, who didn't make mistakes, future Hall of Famer. When you're filling those shoes, you're used to your level of quarterbacking being here, not down here. Like, so when you're like the Carolina Panthers, for example, or any team that's like the Jets or somebody that's had quarterback. Now, Zach Wilson, probably.
The Titans.
Yeah. But Jaguars, as soon as somebody, like, they're used to guys being down here, not up here, like a Ben Roethlisberger level. And so the Steelers fans are a little more entitled. When you drop down to the middle, it's like, oh, this guy isn't it. Got to bench him because he's not all the way up here. And these other teams are like, hey, we might have a guy, because they're like in the middle. So that's where you're at. it takes about 3 years for these quarterbacks for you to know who they are. I saw people say Kenny's gotten enough opportunities and enough chances, and that's baloney. That's bullshit. No, he hasn't. And Mason Rudolph, even fewer opportunities. But then it's like Mitch Trubisky hasn't had any opportunities. The dude's played he's had 55 starts in the league. That's a lot of experience to be able to know if he could read defenses and find the right plays. I know Kenny left a lot of stuff out there on the field. You just mentioned the Jalen Warren screen where it was like nobody was blocking and it was just like a quick dump off. And they had George Pickens on the bottom to the right and in a one-on-one situation. He never looked there because he had a guy coming clear off unblocked off the edge. I don't know if that was a DB blitz or what, but somebody came off completely unblocked. It's in his head by this point in the game. What he's processing and interpreting is like, I don't have time. I can't find anybody else. And the same thing like you said. Get it to Warren because Warren's producing. He's doing this. We've seen it with like Connor Hayward. Tight ends aren't involved in this game whatsoever. Darnell Washington had like one ball thrown his way. Did Freiermuth have a catch? Like a catch maybe?
Yeah, they schemed Freiermuth up on a nice screen and it should have gone. Dude, it should have gone maybe for a touchdown. Like Kenny hit him on the 20-yard line, our 20-yard line. So 80 yards to go for this screen. He's got Mason Cole and Isaac Sumalo. Maybe someone else in front of him too. And there's one guy in front of them, and he just gets around Mason Cole and tackles Pat Freiermuth. I was stunned silent that screen didn't go farther because it's all you could see was Freiermuth, his blockers, one Brown defender in green grass. And the dude gets around Mason Cole and tackles Freiermuth after a gain of like 6, I think.
Yeah, and then the Warren play, like there were 3 brown shirts with orange pants all over them, and it's like how many?
And ironically, Freiermuth was open on that play. I saw the replay this morning again of that play. He runs like a little post inside, wide open, but before the guys break on Jalen Warren, and Kenny still throws it to Jalen Warren.
You make a very, very good point as I'm going through the rest of the plays here because we're going to get to the bad Browns punt and what happens after the game gets tied. But some of these plays, like ineligible man downfield. Like these plays are taking too long to develop. And some of that is starting from the center position. Mason Cole, I hate seeing a highlight. You could see it. They don't usually like just put the spotlight on it, but there was one where Kenny's hands like all the way out here. Great. You have 2 seconds to throw the ball and you've just wasted one of them by trying to secure it. Now what is he supposed to do? Like send it into the stands or whatever, or a miscommunication with Deontay no trusted with him at all being able to catch the ball or whatever might be the case. But there's not that's a whole lot. That's a whole part of it. Or the coaching itself. Is it wide receiver coaching? Is it Matt Canada? Matt Canada is ultimately, it's Tomlin and it's Canada, and Canada should be coordinating the offense. So you get all these different groups together. These guys like break off a route, and there's like no. Like that was the great thing about Ben Roethlisberger. And I think Kenny can have that with somebody like a George Pickens, where Ben had it with Antonio Brown, where it could be playground football because they had an understanding. I'm going to go here if this happens. I'm going to go here if this happens. They had a feel for each other. There's no feel right now between Kenny Pickett and Deontay Johnson and or George Pickens, who ends up making like a Matrix-like catch right after this bad punt. The Steelers force a 3-and-out by virtue of the only penalty called on the Browns. You had Hudson that was called for illegal use of hands. TJ Watt gets a really kind of crappy, dumpy sack, but they lose 2 yards. And so it was 3rd and 22, and they pick up like 14 or whatever. Elijah Moore, they were well off the rocker here. Ends up punting. Bjorquez punts 25 yards. Steelers get it at their own 48. They're right out at the logo. 12 yards over to George Pickens. The ball's thrown like behind him. Why is the ball thrown behind him? What is Kenny seeing or not seeing? Is he not anticipating? Because we didn't have that. Like, I know you were at camp in all preseason. His anticipation was just fine. His timing's just fine. That's what makes me think there's something else. There's something else going on here. He's part of it, but it's a team game. There's something else going on here. Coaching, whatever.
Yeah, it almost doesn't make sense, man. The thing I keep reading is what happened to Kenny Pickett. His development has regressed. He's a lot more gun shy. He's got happy feet. He's unsure of what he's seeing. He's not seeing things. It's so bad at times that you have to. We're not even trying to make an excuse here. It's trying to find an answer more so how you could see a guy play so well in the preseason and develop or seemingly develop as the captain of the offense and took real command, was throwing all of his passes confidently. And the minute that 49ers game started, we were right back at square one, like as if it was Kenny's first live game action again. It almost makes no sense.
Yeah, think about when we've been bitching though. 49ers defense, Browns defense again. I mean,
Yeah,
hello.
the perspective is important, and that relates kind of to what I was saying. Where like when you're having as rough of a season as Kenny Pickett is having, and you're struggling the way he's struggling, whenever you play a really good defense, it's on full display, and it's just it gets ugly, and it is important, and it can make you feel better remembering, hey, we're not playing the best and the second best defense every week, but it doesn't. It's hard to get that message across to fans because it's the wound is still very fresh right now from what we saw on Sunday.
Oh, it's very fresh because they get the ball, and you have the 12-yard pass to Pickens. Now you're at the 40. So you're like 55 to 60-yard field goal range, right? And Kenny attempts a pass. Doesn't say who it's for. Like a lot of this game is a blur because I was so pissed off at some point. And
that might have been the deep shot where there was nobody on the TV screen.
Yeah. Short left though. It said.
Oh, okay.
I don't know. Yeah, that one. It was like, yeah, that looked like an awesome ball. We're finally going deep. Like the only time, like we didn't have time to in a lot of cases. I know, like, there's a lot of people analyzing film and they're saying he was really rushed here. It didn't have to be. That does come back to coaching because it's in his head by this point. Again, the first play of the game, he's like taking a sack for a safety. Like, what the hell? And so now you have Najee Harrison 2nd and 10 on the Cleveland 40. You put Najee in, you run him left guard, and he loses 5 yards. And now I'm ready. I mean, I need a brick to throw at my TV, not one of the foam ones, like a real brick. Kenny then short right, Jaylen Warren, only 2 yards. Stopped by Zadarius Smith of all people, a freaking defensive end. Like they didn't see this coming because you could only go to the well so many times on 3rd down. And then Presley Harvin punts 29 yards. All full 29 yards. Way to go, dude. And somehow the defense still pretty much forces them out. They get 1 first down here, and they force them out. And luckily, the Browns, this might not happen with other teams, and this is why the inside linebacker position and metal with the safeties and everything else concerns me so much. If David Njoku doesn't drop like a bazillion passes in this game, this could have been far worse. The Browns did not take any deep shots. I was worried sick at some point, but they knew they just weren't going to have that same amount of time, where the Steelers just didn't really figure that out. They never really took a shot anyways, but they knew TJ Watt, Alex Highsmith, these guys are going to get home. We don't know our guys' accuracy, arm strength. They knew there was a deficiency with Thompson Robinson. So they didn't even try for it. They tried to run the ball and it didn't work, and they still won the game by eking it out, playing it very eerily similar to the way the Steelers usually do.
Yeah, credit to them because Charles Davis was calling for that on the broadcast too, like every other play. Like the Browns can take a deep shot here because the Steelers are really sitting on these routes. And he said it like 3 or 4 times, and the Browns never like change strategy, which usually that'll kill you in the NFL playing that conservatively. But the Browns figured out a formula that the Steelers couldn't stop. It was like death by paper cuts.
Yeah, Jim Donovan, I caught some of the Browns call on the radio too, because I was like all over the place with doing this game. I was sitting at a Steelers bar, and then I was commuting home, and I caught some of the halftime. And Jim Donovan, because I got the XM was the because it was Browns home game, I caught the Browns call. And Jim Donovan, he's been doing that like 25. He actually showed him on the broadcast. He's actually a very good one. He's one of the top guys in the NFL. That's not that gets Bill Hillgrove. He is too. But it's all they talked about. And I forgot who the color guy was that was with him. But he's like, yeah, in the little stick route, something else here. Maybe try and like take it deep. I understand what the Steelers were trying to do too. The stuff that goes out to Jaylen Warren, whatever. They're trying to stretch the field, keep Myles Garrett, Zadarius Smith, and these guys off of your quarterback. So from that kind of standpoint, I wasn't too upset with that. But the execution was just so piss poor, and they never tried to get like these 8-9 guys out of the box at any point. It was like both teams were just doing the same thing and beating the snot out of each other, right? So you get down to this point in the game, and now the Steelers had the bad punt from the Browns. They got good field position, did absolutely nothing with it. I know Presley Harvin, what are you going to do punting from the Browns 43? He punts 29 yards, but only goes to the 14. maybe you don't want like a touchback or whatever brings them out to the 20, but geez, oh man, like that's just it sucks. What's going on here?
A high school kid could do that.
Yeah, you got to pin them a little bit more. Maybe you could put a little more pressure on them. Tomlin's still trying to win this field position battle, right? He's trying to inch them further back to their goal line. So when you get the ball by default, maybe we could trip over our shoelaces on offense and get Boswell in the field goal position, which is what should have just happened on the previous drive if you didn't make a bunch of insane play calls. Well, the Steelers get this ball back, but Yorquez kicks the ball 59 yards from the 32 now. So they were at their 14. And they got a 16-yard play, Kareem Hunt run play. And the defense is starting to show signs of slowing down. And you only got so many bodies to rotate in there because you're already calling people in from off the street, which, by the way, Miles Jack reportedly and Rappaport, while we've been doing this, in the building. So,
oh, nice.
With the Steelers. So that looks
Breaking
like that's
news.
Yeah, it looks like that's going to happen. So I'm semi-excited for it as long as he could stay healthy. That would be a nice feather in the cap. Him and Roberts together would probably be better than him and Bush or Spillane. So
I think you did a good job summarizing or explaining earlier that he got cut because he cost so much money, essentially. Yeah. Like, he didn't have a bad season with the Steelers. I wouldn't go that far. It just wasn't like the Miles Jack from UCLA and from the Jacksonville Jaguars was viewed as like a Devin Bush player when he was good.
Yeah.
And a playmaker, can cover, can do it all. And at this stage in Jack's career, he's just more of a solid linebacker. He isn't a bad player, but he's solid. And for vet minimum, we'll take a guy like that right now with experience, who's familiar with our defense and can just help give us some solid veteran leadership and depth in that area. We need reinforcements at this point. If we want to make any kind of run at this last playoff spot, second to last playoff spot, the Steelers need to continue turning over stones.
Yeah, Jack's only 28 years old. And I mean, it also speaks volumes to a Mike Tomlin-led team. Mike Tomlin calls on the phone. You like Mike Tomlin? You liked playing for Mike Tomlin? Like, Pittsburgh isn't like, this. You're not going to South Beach. You're not going to like California or LA or New York City in the Big Apple. You're going to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Let's call it what it is. It's
trying to win football games here.
Yeah, it's not a destination, but to play for Mike Tomlin, the guy's going to come out and retire. He went to Philadelphia, and they were just like, in the Super Bowl. So, like, he doesn't want, probably not going to see this. But he's going to the practice squad, which makes him an even bigger bargain. What is that, like $20,000 a week or whatever? And he could be called up, and then we'll see what goes on from there as far as roster building. But back on the game here, breaking news getting in the way of things, right? Prolonging this. Kenny Pickett. Pass incomplete, short right to Deontay Johnson, deep right to Deontay Johnson, short left to Deontay Johnson, all incomplete, 3 pass plays in a row. They got the ball back after this 59-yard punt. They were on their 30, 1:42 left on the clock, punt it at 1:28. The Browns get the ball with 1:18 to go with a couple of their timeouts, and then that's pretty much the ball game. And
something's got to give. You knew it was going to be them or us, and as a Steeler fan, fortunately, I feel like we're usually the ones that have the reason to celebrate when the clock hits 0. We're usually the team that is able to, like you said, trip over our own feet into a field goal and win the game. Yesterday, it just didn't go that way. It was the Browns' time, and that sucks because you get to a point watching this team where you almost expect it. Each punt that we got, each punt that we fielded in the fourth quarter, towards the end, I thought, this is it. This is going to be when the Steelers take their lead and Browns go home crying. Unfortunately, though, it didn't happen that way this time.
Yeah, I need a Maths with Joe session here because I need to get a graphic because the only one I got is the Brian one, which is just good enough. Brian, you're here in spirit. Brian was trying to jump on. He's actually available this week, but I didn't want to do the 3 of us. The show would go 2 hours when it comes to this game. And you haven't been around for a minute, Zach. I mean, I've been traveling and everything's been busy. You're working. Zach tweets out yesterday, embarrass him a little bit here, maybe. He's going to laugh. He's like, I'm going to go work on my basement ceiling now. And I thought it was totally like a joke, like, oh, yeah, well, we're going to be in the basement, maybe the ceiling, whatever. Like there was something punny there. No, he's legitimately working on his basement ceiling. Take out the anger, man. Ripping things out, hammering things. Take out your anger.
I had the thought, I had the epiphany, I guess you could call it, yesterday as I was pulling staples out from above me right here. I had the thought to myself as my phone was in my pocket buzzing. I was like, I totally understand like dads now, man. Sometimes you just want to get away and do manual labor because literally doing work feels better than focusing on your own misery. And
Yeah.
just getting away from football. I didn't want to watch any of the 4 o'clock games. I didn't want
Oh,
to hear
me neither.
about the offensive deficiencies of the Steelers. I didn't want to talk to anybody. I didn't want to answer my phone. I just wanted to come down in my basement and work.
That's
And
funny.
one guy commented, "Oh, can I join you and hang myself down there?" I said, "That's a little bit not really what I was looking for, dude." So it took a turn. I'm actually working on my ceiling. I wasn't trying to make a dark joke.
Yeah, come on, folks. Like, you're really gonna kill yourself over a football game? But and just in the spirit of Brian, we're thinking of you. You've been on for like a month straight. Got to give somebody else a chance. So Matt's with Joe. I'm gonna make one like that. I don't have time to do it right now. What in the hell? Defensive delay of game when clearly was it Harrison Bryant jumped on that field goal attempt. You saw his head bob and everything.
Yeah.
All the players are like, hey, now I get it. You go to undermine the game and you're calling for a penalty that isn't there. They blew that and then call it on the Steelers. This ball was going to be snapped from originally the 20 to 24 yard line. Steelers 24. So you've got anywhere from 15, 20 yards you add on that. If you go very extreme, that's a 44-yard field goal attempt. It's probably more like 41, 42. However far back you want to take it from there, and then the 10 yards from the goal line to the back end zone where the posts are, right? So just rudimentary, 40-ish yard field goal. Should have been another 5 yards tacked on. At least give the guy a little more of a challenge and entertain our thoughts of a missed field goal in overtime. Like, I was just like really pissed off that they missed that call. I don't know that Dustin Hopkins is going to miss that kick anyways. But it was just like, let's pour a little more salt in the wounds while we're at it. So
Yeah, but you're right that you feel a lot better as the other side of, if you feel a lot better as a Steeler fan if a guy's pulling up from 40 plus than 40 less. It's just something about that range with field goals that when you're over 40 yards, you can give yourself that hope that it might be missed. When they're inside 40 yards and they're like a 10-year veteran like Hopkins, that was about when I realized I don't even know why I'm watching. I watched just in case some miracle, but he split the uprights.
Yeah, I hear you. So, well, where do they go from here? Cincinnati playing with Jake Browning, and they've got a mini bye to kind of get their stuff together. I don't think Cincinnati has quite the same defense that the Cleveland Browns do. Another divisional game. You got the Steelers that are sitting third in the AFC North at 6-4. They're 2-1 in the division. Both the Ravens and the Browns are 3-2. Baltimore still needs to get their bye around the corner here, and they have a rough schedule coming up. This is actually where, in the preseason, Brian and I had said, wouldn't be surprised to see if Cleveland was only like a 5 or 6 loss team total through the end of this season.
They're firmly in the playoff picture, kind of firmly.
Yeah.
And if we know the Steelers, they'll win next week.
Yes, and I know everybody's going to be like, fire this guy, fire that guy. Look, take a deep breath. If all of this stuff transpires again next week, then I encourage you to bring your pitchforks and torches to the Arizona game that's going to follow after that. You're going to have 2 home games there. Huh?
I'll pay for the Ubers.
Pay for the Ubers. It'll remind you of the old Cleveland Stadium when the team was moving and they were ripping out the stands and throwing like debris on the field. So
yeah.
The 95 Browns. So I would totally do that too if they decided to move the Steelers somewhere. But that'll do it for us, folks. I think that's covered, like we said, examining every aspect of the Steelers' loss to the Browns. I think we covered most of it. Is there stubbornness on this coaching staff? Maybe. You alluded to it with the running back share, the allegiances and whatnot. I know Najee was kind of PO'd. He could say what he wants. Or Chuk said something a week or two before that. Guys, you got to play better. And everybody else just plays below the line too. We know there's some spots that need to get fixed on this team. There's already people talking about tanking and losing the rest of these games to get a better quarterback. Newsflash, the Steelers probably won't be sniffing that unless they give up like the next several years of first round and top draft picks. And they're still not going to just walk away from Kenny because for all the reasons we said, we don't know what all is impacting his play right now. And if it's
that's not what the Steelers do.
Yeah.
It's not what they do. We know this franchise. They've held on to Canada for this long, and that they're going to continue to give Kenny Pickett his chances until they feel like they have a complete bust on their hands. And if they don't, they're gonna continue to work with him more because they want to see him grow. It's it's the most frustrating and rewarding part of being a Steeler fan is their stubbornness slash stability. You just have to hope that they're making the right call in these situations.
Does any team actually do this though? Like, they usually kind of wait it out a few years, right? I mean, the
Yeah,
Jets had
it's extremely rare.
yeah,
That's why Josh Rosen is the poster child for like moving on after 1 year. It just doesn't really happen, especially if your quarterback has shown any semblance of being able to play, which Kenny has, albeit in small spurts, and it's been a little while. But that's why they're probably going to continue to stick with him at least through his rookie contract. And I'll say this about tanking: taking in the NFL doesn't happen. Okay, people try, teams try, and sometimes are able to pull it off. But the NFL is its own unique beast of a pro sports league where the game is so physical, you can't play half-assed. You've got guys on every team. Just look at the Steelers as a microcosm of this. You've got guys like Trenton Thompson, like Michael Walker, like Dan Moore. These guys who are viewed as not superstars by any means, but they're going to play their hearts out and play their best because they're playing for their next paycheck. They're playing for their next roster spot. They're playing for their game tape. So the idea of tanking is ludicrous, and just, you sound so dumb when you're like, the Steelers should just lose every game on purpose. They would never do that. The Dolphins even had a hard time getting away with that. They got investigated. Brian Flores got fired, all that mess. A team like the Steelers won't ever do that.
yeah.
And be thankful for that.
No, but yeah, forget the guys that are on the field. You're like talking about replacing someone and they're not going to have their job. I guarantee you, I'm going to do everything I can to keep my job and keep everything that, I get paid to do. I need a paycheck. I need to put food on the table for my family. And it's a very small window in the NFL. So that's why, you can't necessarily just say to tank. The only way you could tank is if you literally sit people down, and then there's no guarantee that guy's going to be back the next year. And particularly so when you're outside of a Steelers situation, it might not be the same coaching staff. They come in, somebody else new has a whole different philosophy. And that's something I thought about too, if and when they were to move on from Matt Canada, is do these players and fit the scheme that they're looking to run? Same thing with Terrell Austin, and I think that's more really when you look at it as an overall picture, it's more of a Mike Tomlin thing with his stamp and imprint on the defense. And they did well. They did everything that they needed to do. I know they didn't stop the Browns at the very end, but that's where you get down to having guys that you got Miles Killebrew out there, for example, playing, because now Elijah Riley or somebody else gets hurt, and Killebrew is strictly like a special teams guy. Or you have, like you said, Trenton Thompson, excuse me. Really, I was screaming yesterday. I was upset. It should be crying too. But yeah, you're trying to get by with the patchwork defense that is held for so long in this game. And when you get down to it, there wasn't a huge disparity in time of possession, but that defense just made two big stands, as opposed to when you had that the field goal drive that tied the game and you kept them off the field. What was that? It was in real time. That was 7 minutes or so of real time. I don't know what the real time was with the other drives and the bad punt by Harvin, but it was 30 seconds. Guys can't even try and get a swig of water and let that even go down your gullet in 30 seconds. Hey, grab your helmet, ready to roll again. It was so rushed and so bad. And
the one 3 and out, I think it was the Deontay Johnson sequence, the 3 passes. I think they said it was 16 seconds that got taken off.
Yeah, for the actual clock. Yeah, it was 142 to 128.
14 seconds.
Yeah, and then Harvin punts, and it was a whole 10-second thing, and that was about it. So, yeah, there's a lot of bad. I wouldn't say necessarily jump off a bridge, but it doesn't
Day's darkest before the dawn.
There you go. Batman, Dark Knight Rises, filmed in Pittsburgh.
There you go.
Yeah.
I did that on purpose.
Sure you did. The Dorian Gray references. Brian comes up with some stuff. All right, folks, we've been up against it. There's just been so much to really chew off here, and it was good to have the flashback on the program. Thanks for joining us, Zach.
Welcome.
Long sigh for me.
I'll be back.
Long sigh for me, because people know I tried to find the optimism, or I tried to find the silver lining. And I've been saying before, the team had been playing just enough to get those wins. And then if they could keep building on this, there's a light at the end of that tunnel. This was not one of those games. And the only thing you could hope for is that, yeah, the defense played better. You might get some reinforcements with Minka, Miles Jack, maybe somebody else in the safeties, or maybe Trenton Thompson continues to like ball or something. You know what I mean? And then that looks better. You at least got the defense. For the offensive side, I don't know what you do. It does start with the quarterback. I don't know what's wrong with the quarterback. I don't know how you fix the quarterback. Maybe you got to bench the quarterback, and the other quarterbacks that are available, if they were already better, they'd be playing ahead of them. So that's all I could leave it at that. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. Till next time, follow Flash, Z Flash NFL.
I'm doing like and subscribe, but yeah, follow me too.
Yeah. And until next time, my name's Joe. His name's Zach. We encourage everyone out there to be safe, be good, and we'll catch you later.
We would like to thank you for listening and remind our listeners to follow us on social media and our website, www.steelcityunderground.com.